I'm Aaron Friend, and here's a whole bunch of squares. Although, if you notice, none of them are squares. Now, first off, we've got your drawing kind of things. This is all for paper. When you're drawing up plans, these are the squares you will use. Then you get a little into kind of a refined woodwork. You got like a little gauge like this. It'll tell you, say, that is 70 degrees there, and this is 110 degrees here. So you can make your real accurate little marks on small things for fine woodwork. This is an engineer's square. It's really good for making sure your table saw blade is square or your jointer is square, and it's also good for making sure the things that you put through the jointer are coming out square, especially the jointer, the table saw jointer planer relationship. It's nice to make sure that you're creating an actual square piece of wood with this, and it's nice accurate inch scale there. This is a combination square. It's kind of like that square. It shows you square, and it shows you a 45 that you can mark, but also it has an adjustable ruler that comes up and down, which is really nice. Say you want to make a mark at 4 inches, you just set it at 4 inches, and then you can take your pencil and go, all right, 4 inches along that line, and you can cut along that line. So it's a very useful square, engineer square, or I mean the combination square. And here we go. This is a trim thing here. This is when you're cutting crown molding or base. You'll come to a corner in a room, and theoretically you do 2 45s or a 45 and a straight cut with a cope, but that's a whole other video. But usually that's only if it's a real 90-degree angle, and it's usually not a real 90-degree angle. So this helps you to stick it in the corner and find out what that actual angle is, so you can divide your bevels how you need to. And you can also turn it this way and measure the outside corners and make sure they're the right shape, so your crown comes together perfectly, because that's ideal. That's what you want. So that's for crown, and it's really nice, and it gives you the wall angle and the spring angle on these little gauges here. Then we've got our various kinds of this little just basic angle gauge. This one here, you turn it on, you get it on something real square, and you push a button that zeroes it out. And now, according to whatever you zeroed it out at, it'll give you a very, very accurate digital reading. So that's an extremely accurate 89.9. So yeah, you can go crazy with this thing. It's digital, it's very accurate if that's what you're after. This is a similar angle gauge. It helps you find an angle. It's also just got a level, so you can hold it, say, on top of a roof and get the pitch of the roof by using this level. That's the only real use for it I can think of. It's also got a measuring device on this side. But this is the most basic version of those, and it's pretty useful, really. If you're say you're framing without math and you're using strings, you can figure an angle of a hip rafter even by putting this thing on the framing and running strings, and you can use it for all kinds of things. But in remodeling, what I use it for mostly is just in remodeling, you put it on a piece of trim to find the angle that's already there that you're replacing maybe, and then you can mark it on a piece of wood and use a speed square to figure out the angle that you're going to cut, or you can even just put it right on your chop saw and set the angle of your chop saw just with this without even ever knowing what number it is. That's a pretty handy little thing. Another thing you see is a drywall square, and for sheet goods, you just stick it on one side and draw theoretically a straight line, but it never is a straight line. They're just never 90s for real. So you can mark there, and then just use it as a straight edge. That's probably its best use. And drywall guys, it's good enough for sheetrock. They put it on the top of a piece of sheetrock, and they hold it with their toe, and they cut with a knife just directly. It's pretty handy for that. But for sheet goods, it's good for rough cuts. And, here's another version of that same thing, which is an adjustable version. So it's kind of like that combination square, in that you can adjust it and mark little pieces, and you can also loosen it even more and adjust it for certain angle cuts, which I don't really use much. I have that Vestal track saw, so I just mark and set my track on my marks. But you can set this at different angles and lock it down. You can also use just marks and a chalk line. That's how you do like roof sheathing or something. Most often you'll just mark it, and chalk line or some kind of straight edge, 2x4, whatever you got. But you could use that also for that. For framing, for basic framing, there's like the big speed square, which is really useful for cutting a rafter like a 2x10 or something that's just a little bit bigger. But most carpenters in their pouch will carry this, a speed square. This is just a common speed square, most often used for just making a square mark before you cut it with your circular saw. The old school guys, they just use their actual saw shoe to kind of gauge what square is and cut it from that, and that's pretty good. And the super old school guys would even use their saw. This has a 90 in it right there. It's also got a 45 on it right there. So you can actually use your old saw to get those marks. But this speed square is cool for multiple reasons. It has the degrees. You can see the degrees here, but it also has the common rafter cut. So say that's an 8 and 12 right there, and I can mark that. And it's got the hip rafter cut, which is for hippers. So it's got a lot of information on it. It's very useful. It's also got just a scale of numbers, so you can use it for laying out. Like there's 3.5 right there, so you can use it to mark a 3.5 or something. It's very useful, the most useful, the speed square. Now here's another version that can be used like a speed square. It's got angles on it, so you can turn it and mark angles. It's got what I like about it, what I use it for, is when you have a top plate and a bottom plate, and you put them together, and you run your layout, you can mark it along here and along these two planes. And that's really its best use. You can also find where your bolt is on your bottom plate and mark that, and use it to mark your bolt. And you can use it to hold your chalk line for long distances and things like that. But most of what I use it for is for the top plate, bottom plate combination, just marking that out, laying that out. This is another version of that same kind of thing, except it's designed to be lighter, and it's got calipers, so it holds, so you want to say that's 2.5, well, you can measure with your calipers from the inside to inside, and you can mark your bolt with it as well. But I've never really used this thing. It looks really convenient, but I'm just so used to this other thing that I don't really use it. This is another framing wizard that's kind of supposed to be in between a speed square and a framing square, but it's silly. I mean, I've already got that. I've got a framing square, so it's kind of gimmicky. This thing and this thing are both just kind of gimmicky things, but they're trying. They're constantly trying. But honestly, the original, this is the best thing. I mean, these two things together are awesome. But you could build a house just with this. This thing, especially with these stair gauges, like the small one, I just used to set my table saw blade height, really. But this big one, you can take your stair gauge and put it, say, on 8 inches and 12 inches, and you can mark that same 8 and 12 that we marked earlier with the speed square. You can mark that. If you're, and that's for a rafter, and that's the plumb cut, and this is the level cut of the rafter. So at the bottom, you can even have your level cut already described, or you can change it up so it's describing the tread and the riser on stairs. So you can go like 7 and 11 and just mark it down your stairs, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you don't even have to do much math. You can just mark out your stairs. So that's how that works. So that's pretty cool. It's this is the mother of all the squares. This is the original, the framing square, and it's my favorite because it's the funnest to use. There's a whole chart of information here, and that's a whole video unto itself. And so you got your framing square, and you got your speed square. Those two, you could definitely build a house. If you get a little fancier, get you one of these, and this is kind of nice for some trim carpentry too. And that's really, really all you need. I'm Aaron Friend. These are all my squares, none of which are square. Thanks for watching.
Video.